Good morning. Happy Monday. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis, and you're watching the Dr. Laurie Davis Show here on a very snowy, oh no, not already. I'm looking out my window and it's coming down just ever so softly, but it's going to snow all day here in the great Canadian Northwest. So I'm just all cuddled in here and snowied in and just doing a solo show today. Not just, but doing a solo show today. And I thought I'd pull something out of the archives. I had forgotten about it actually, but a long time ago, many years ago, let's say, about, I don't know, 14 years ago, I authored a workshop called 10 Ways to Build Confident Children. And I thought, I need to bring that back out. And we do one-day workshops around that, or a retreat workshop. And before I continue, I'd just like to say that we're streaming live right now on E360 TV, also on our YouTube channel, Laurie Davis Show Host, and of course, our Facebook page, Self-Worth the Missing Link Superstars. So yes, this is just a powerful, it's a little dynamite workbook, I'll tell you that. So I'm going to spend the next hour just highlighting what are the 10 ways and why did I want to put that together? Well, when I think about it, everybody knows the word bullying, and maybe your kids have been bullied, and it's a really hurtful thing. We've all been bullied. I've been bullied by professionals. I've been bullied by my customers. And as a kid, maybe I didn't recognize that it was bullying, but it probably was. So what does that mean? Well, it means that someone who doesn't really feel very powerful wants to exert that lack of power by thinking and believing that they're in control, or they're lording it over you, so to speak. So it's a big issue, and there's so many kids who are just hurting from being bullied. But here's what I know. Who do bullies pick on? Let's think about that for a minute. Who do they prey upon? Prey, like an animal. Who do they prey upon? Well, they pick the kids that they don't think have a life, or are insecure, or can't stand up for themselves. Would that be correct in assuming that? And so that's who become the victims. But what if we approach it from another place and say, wow, what if my child could stand up to that without it harming their self-worth or their self-esteem? Wouldn't that be cool? Because then a bully will back off if they see that what they're doing isn't working. So they just go to the next one and the next one. So I'm going to share 10 ways that we as parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, grandmas, cookums, Muslims, anybody who has children in their care. I believe we all have a say in that. And so let's get started. I hope you have your notebooks out, and 10 ways to build confident children. First of all, let's take into consideration what are some things that cause our children not to be confident. Well, our parents are our most impressionable teachers. So what are we saying? What are we doing? And we all know kids are like sponges. They soak everything up, right? And we ultimately live what we learn. So what did I learn? What am I learning? Lots. And children don't have a filter, so they don't have a way to go. They don't rationalize like we do as adults. So when something happens, they don't have a way to discern which is good for them and which is not. So for example, well, mom said that's a good thing. I think I'm going to remember that and keep that and use it later in life. Children just don't think that way. They're more instinctive, right? Because they haven't been programmed so heavily yet. Or they don't say, well, gee, Yeah, I'm not going to listen to that because that's not a good thing. So we don't have a filter until later on as we mature. I know some adults who don't have any filters, even, which is not a good thing when you're an adult. But anyway, that was a side note. Sidebar. We have heard it said many times that children live what they learn. I just shared that. And our parents are our most impressionable teachers. And this is how I begin the workshops. So it is time to break the cycles that have existed for generations. The dysfunction, the art of keeping family secrets, old patterns that get passed down. And I have a funny story about this, and I'll have to use my Southern accent. No disrespect intended. I love it. And when I go to Texas and places like that, and I'm only there a couple of hours, and I've got the twang as well because I love it so much. So this young couple got married, and they were going to cook a ham. And she noticed that her hubby was cutting off the end of the ham. And this is an old story that I heard from the famous motivational speaker, Zig Ziglar, years ago. And so, of course, he spoke like that. And he said, well, she said, why are you cutting the end off the ham? And he said, well, I don't know. I'm cutting off the end of the ham because my mama always cut the end off the ham. Well, I wonder why mama did that. Let's call her and find out. So they phone his mom and they said, Mom, how come you always cut the end off the ham? And she said, well, I cut the end off the ham because my mama cut the end off her hams. Well, Granny was in a nursing home, but she was still competent and could take a call. So they decided to call her and find out why she cut the end off the ham. So they made the phone call and she said, well, honey child, the reason I cut the end off the ham is because my roaster was always too short. So the story, I hope you enjoyed it, tells us that a lot of times we're doing things that we're not even conscious of because that's what we lived or that's what we learned. And so we keep those cycles or patterns going. Self-esteem, self-worth, self-confidence is essential if we're to embrace the abundance of life. Abundance that life has to offer. Our ability to take risks, put ourselves out there, and become fearless is a lifetime journey. So let's begin where we are. And while we're talking in the next hour, or I'm sharing, this is not only about our children, this is about us. Because if, as a mom, I don't have any confidence, chances are my kids won't have any either, because they're learning those patterns of, what do you call it? I don't like the word issues. Some people say, you've got issues. No, I have situations. And I teach my kids, when I'm working with the children, I always say to them, and my adults, I'm perfect. I came here perfectly. It's just my situations that haven't always been perfect. Now, isn't that more accurate? How can we be a divine creature of the universe, a child of God, however you want to interpret that, higher power? We're divine creatures. And how can we not be perfect? We are perfect. And I've heard so many people say, oh, I'm not perfect. I'm just human. Well, welcome to the world of perfectionism. No, I'm not talking about that. That's another whole deal, perfectionism, right? That's another behavior. The focus from day one is all about what we cannot do, what we cannot have, and even why we're not good enough to have it. I remember one of my parents saying to me, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I'm thinking, I'm thick. What do I have to be ashamed of? I haven't done anything yet. Right? So the word no. Sometimes saying no is a good thing when we're placed in a compromising position or being asked to do things we feel do not support us, then having boundaries is important. So we need to teach our children how to have boundaries so they can say no and be okay with that. Make a list of situations in my child's life where saying no is a good thing. Well, no, you can't run out in the street. No, you can't put your hands on a burner. We have to say no. But a lot of times, as a young school teacher, before the question was even out of the little kid's mouth, I was saying no already without giving it any thought. So sometimes we take that position of authority as a parent or a teacher or a police officer or whatever, and we automatically say no before we even hear them out. So we say no to exercise our authority. No, you can't have that cookie. No, you can't have that. No, no, no. Saying no for the wrong reasons is a confidence buster. It makes us feel like we're not acceptable. We're being rejected. I don't know about you, but I don't like being told no. When somebody says, no, that can't be done. No, we can't do that. No, that's a crazy idea. That's my motivator, but we shouldn't have that as a motivator. People told me years ago I couldn't do what I'm doing right now and earn a living by helping people. Like, what is that? So happy I didn't buy that. So I use this little formula. You have 3 baskets. I should have had them here. There's a red basket, and that basket is no. And that means only when my safety is involved. Safety. That's a direct no. And the blue basket is a maybe basket. Oh, Mom, I want to dye my hair pink and get a mohawk haircut. Maybe we'll have to talk about it. It's not a blunt, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. It's a hairdo. Put things into perspective. It's a hairdo. It'll grow out. It'll get longer. So that would go in the maybe basket. Maybe. We'll talk about it. When Dad comes home tonight, let's sit down and talk about that. So they walk away feeling what? Heard. Do you know the biggest complaint that I get from my clients is that they never felt heard? And then the yes, the maybe, you see, is something to be negotiated. And the yes is a definite go for it. Mom, I want to learn how to make cookies. Yes. You don't say, no, I don't have time. No, we can't do that. No, not now. That's a yes. Because trust me, if I had a kid that made cookies, we'd have cookies all the time, right? So no is about boundaries. Healthy no's. That's how you build confidence. They know. Do you know why kids don't go to their parents with their problems? Usually because they don't want to put you, the parent, under any more stress than you're already demonstrating. And I've asked my kids this when I work with my kids. In 2000, about 2000, that year, I interviewed 100 12-year-olds. And their greatest fear was not the fear of sickness or the fear of being hurt or the fear of the dark. Their greatest fear was losing a parent, either to death or divorce or separation. It puts them in a state of urgency if they only have one parent. Because now if anything happens to that one parent, they're an orphan in their mind, you see. So we must be very gentle, but yet build strength. So that's one way to build confidence is when you say no, you mean it. You don't backpedal. You don't feel guilty. You don't try and make it up to them somehow. The answer is no. because they know if you're healthy in that response, that's an indicator that you actually care about them and their safety. So, no, you can't go there. No, you can't. I want to go to the dance. I want to go to the school dance. Well, maybe. Let's sit down and talk about it. Who's going to be there? Will there be chaperones? You can talk things out and eventually give a healthy no. And I had a situation where this girl was really rebelling because her mom wouldn't let her go to the dance. And then she told me some things happened that night after the dance. And she was not involved, but the law became involved in whatever was going down. And she went and thanked her mom for not allowing her to go to the dance. You see? So how would this formula of no, maybe, and yes, when they ask questions or they want something, there's only 3 answers: yes, maybe, and no, all used properly. So what kind of damage do you think we've caused by just automatically saying no because we're the dad and I'm the parent and I'm the teacher and no? What kind of damage do you think that creates? Well, it certainly doesn't build self-worth and it doesn't build confidence. So we have to figure out ways to do it more appropriately so that they actually feel supported, they feel loved, but yet there's boundaries. You know what disturbs me? I've just thinking about this as I'm talking. I hear a lot of parents say that their children are their best friends. Okay. So you're 40 and your best friend is 7. How does that work? Children don't need you as a friend. They don't need us as their friends. They need us as their mentors, their guides, their educational vehicle. They'll have friends, but I have this feeling that part of it is about the parents' insecurities and wanting to be their friend. The other thing is, every kid that I hear a mom call out, I don't know where somebody came up with the name Bud or Buddy. The kid has a name, Bill or Sue or Mary. Address them by their proper name. Because when you say, hey, buddy, hey, bud, every kid has that name now. And I'm convinced that it's the parent who's needy, not the child, because the parent needs a friend, maybe. I don't know. But have you noticed that? Younger parents call every kid as bud, especially the boys. And I find that a little disturbing. Okay, so number 1, the proper use of the word no. That provides security. Children feel like you care. They feel like you're taking care. And sometimes the answer is no. And sometimes the answer is yes. And everything can be negotiated pretty much. So number 2, in order for us to build that resilience in our children and that consistency, we want them to become fearless. Fearless in the right kind of way. Yes, they need to be fearful about putting their hands on a burner. Fear is a good thing sometimes. It's a motivator. But we're born with only 2 fears, the fear of falling and the fear of loud noise. And those are usually overcome in the delivery room. Oh, it's a girl, yay! Or it's twins, oh no, right? So, but the rest of our fears, we learn them. We learn. If I'm afraid of spiders, chances are my kids will become afraid of spiders because of my reaction when I see one, a spider. So I always like to ask questions. And I have a, perfect example of when, my mom was young, she nearly drowned. And I was just a baby. I think it was a hot summer day and she and my dad went swimming and she got caught up in this undertow. And so she never went swimming after that I can remember. And to this day, I do not know how to swim. And she was always fearful of us around the water. And my goodness, we grew up in a place where we're completely surrounded by water. So this is a fear that I inherited, I believe. What fear has your children inherited from you? Because if we're constantly in a state of paranoia and fear, well, they pick up on that. They learn that, and that's the way they should be. So if we have a negative experience of our own, for example, of a young child bitten by a dog in a random way, uh, that child is probably afraid of dogs. My grandson used to be afraid of birds. I couldn't figure that out. Every time we'd take him for a walk and we'd go outside, he was just little, maybe 4 or 5, and he'd see a bird and he'd just kind of cower. So what are some fears I have imposed or you have imposed on your children? Think about that one. When we are afraid or fearful, we lack confidence and we doubt ourselves, and it becomes like a paralyzer. And that's something that bullies can pick up on. There's a fearful kid who's paranoid, who's got issues. And they become a victim. They become the food in the food chain. So having lots of self-confidence is about taking risks, being self-assured, and trusting myself with my own decisions. I work with so many people, adults, who have no faith in their decision-making process. They don't trust their own decisions. And I'm thinking, wow, I honestly think and believe and know that I know what's best for Laurie. It's instinctive. And I know when somebody's trying to impose something on me that is not in my best interest. And I always knew that, but I never acted on it because I was fearful of what people would think or how they would feel. I was more worried about how they felt than I was about how I felt. So, what is my personal level of confidence? Because when we have confidence, we become less fearful. Oh, I did that. I accomplished that. I had to move my office on the weekend. I didn't have to, but my office needed to relocate, which I'm in my new space right now. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to move this myself? Like I angst over that for a couple of days, probably a couple of weeks. Drove my friend Sylvia, who was visiting, probably crazy with that. I said, oh, I don't know. It's a lot of work. And she said, let's get started. And so while she was visiting, she helped me empty the cupboard. So thank you to Sylvia, my friend. And then I rallied up some help. And one of my colleagues and her son came, and 2 of my business friends plus personal friends. And 4 of them, it only took them 3 hours. And I mean, I'm talking boxes and boxes and boxes of books and paper. So that was me needing to be quiet, ask for help, get the help, and get moved. And it took them less than 3 hours to make the move. It was amazing. It was amazing. So what I tell my kids, if they're being bullied, even if they're being bullied by their parents, and that happens a lot, and especially children in care, in foster care, I'm thinking, or, there's problems at home. They're very fearful. And a lot of children think when there's some problems at home, it's their fault somehow. And so we need to constantly reassure them that whatever's going on had nothing to do with them. Doesn't mean they'll believe you, but just saying. And I just know that being fearful leads to being paranoid, and then that leads to more poor decisions, and it's just not healthy, right? And yes, there are situations where we need to be fearful and get out of the way, so to speak. So if you're just joining us, I'm talking about 10 workshops that I conduct called 10 Ways to Build Confident Children. It might take us a couple of shows to cover it, but I thought I'd highlight that today because Bullying has become normal, and especially with social media and all the different ways we can be cyber bullied, we can be physically bullied, we can be verbally bullied. There are so many ways we can be bullied. And so I teach my kids 4 words. When somebody's trying to put them down, even their parents, that's not very supportive. So when I actually get them to write it down. That's not very supportive, and to practice that so that when they get accosted by a potential bully or a bullying situation and they say those words, that's not very supportive with that kind of a tone as well. We practice it in their workshop. It causes us to stand back and take a second look at what it is we're doing. That's not very supportive. But that response is only if it's something in our best interest. It's for our best. It's for the best in us to help us emerge in a more productive way. Number 3, this is an interesting concept because a lot of people mix it up, and I've called the workshop support versus enable. Wow, that's big because many of us have grown up with classic enablers. They enable things. So, what does that mean? Enable means I continue to allow a bad behavior in another person. So, for example, perhaps I have a teenage grandson and he's, deciding he's going to substance abuse and he wants money for alcohol or drugs. And he goes to granny to get the money because she will always give him the money. That's called enabling. Supporting would be, what do you need? You need some milk? You need some cereal? What do you need? I will get it for you, but I won't be giving you money because you've not shown yet that you can be responsible. That's called support. Show me you can be responsible and spend it the way you should, and sure, no problem. So here's a story. On Friday nights, Ed would be out partying and drinking with his friends after work. His wife, Brenda, would be with the children and tell them, "Oh, he's at a meeting and he'll be home." Lying in bed listening to them fight at midnight was always confusing. The kids wondered for years what was wrong with Dad. Mom kept the secret going and enabled the situation, pretending that it wasn't in existence. This was not supportive. Support would have been the truth that Dad has a problem with alcohol, but a good man, and we will learn how to live with that by getting help or dealing with it. That's called support. Not pretending it doesn't exist. That's called denial. But it's also called enabling. So when have I enabled a situation? Well, I did that for years with one of my husbands because he would always, maybe at the last minute, decide, my first husband, decide, let's say he didn't want to go to a family function. I'd say, okay, but I'll go. And then when I'd get there, I would lie and say, oh, he had to work, or he's got the flu, or he's sick. And it was just all crap. But that's how I enabled that bad behavior, that disrespect. And enabling is a confidence buster. It means we are allowing an unhealthy situation to persist, like Brenda. What is going on that needs to change for you so that you don't become an enabler? Because that produces weak children. I saw it in my classroom with my 30 little kids every year. And you could see it as clear as day. And I taught kindergarten to start. And you know what? I must share this. It just came up again. We divided the children were they fell into 3 categories. One children who had been at home 100% full time with their mom and dad or their mom. Two, children who had gone to, let's say, nursery school or daycare part time because mom worked part time. And then you had children who were brought up in daycares because mom worked full time. And those daycare people have our children longer than we do at that stage of the game. So, who do you think were the most well adjusted group? A lot of people think that because mom was home full time, that kid was more well adjusted. And the fact is, no, it was they were falling asleep before the day was out. It was the children whose moms worked part time. So, just saying, we learned that. Support may require that I have to take a risk to promote a change. So, what situation right now in your child's life needs to be supported, not enabled, but supported? Did you know that children have $1,000,000 ideas? And how open am I to supporting my child's creativity? Or are they always texting? Are you big enough, bold enough to say, no phone from 2 to 4? I prefer you go outside, or just here's your sketch pad, be creative. Mhm. One of my good friends from many years ago always had an 8-year-old sitting on his board of directors. He said, I always have an 8-year-old on my board of directors because they don't have any limited thinking yet or limiting beliefs. And so if an idea comes up, they can often solve it. So if you want to be more of a supportive person, ask your children to support you. What's wrong with that? Nothing. They learn how to be supportive. Here's a story to explain that. John always dreamed of playing hockey, but growing up poor on a farm, never was able to follow that dream. He was not supported. No, his dream didn't get supported. On the other hand, I had a friend who recently passed away, and in honor of Faye Bardole, I'll share this story. She had 14 of her own children. And I know for a fact that she baked 100 and some odd dozen of cookies every week to take to the farmer's market to support her boys in hockey because that was their dream. So John insisted then, when his son was of age, that Benny would be supported to have everything he needed to play the game. The problem arose, however, when Benny, in his 3rd season, did not want to play hockey anymore. John, angered by this decision, pulled his support of Benny's other desire, which was to take guitar lessons. John now enabled the hockey playing and did not support the music lessons. Benny, not wanting to hurt Dad's feelings, enabled the whole thing just to keep the peace. So enabling creates hurt feelings on both sides. Support moves us forward. Did you connect to this in any way at all? I think there's so much of that. You see it at the hockey rink. The parents whose kids are playing hockey, whoa, some of those behaviors are pretty aggressive. And actually, the children are no doubt probably embarrassed if we were to really look at it. So, an enabler does not build confidence. Support builds confidence. And sometimes that's very tough because we have to be able to look ahead and see the bigger picture, because children don't see that all the time. They might say things like, when I grow up, I want to be a fireman, but they don't really envision the whole role of what would that entail. So they don't have those details. So support comes a little tougher. It's easy to enable. You can just say, oh, okay, whatever. Do what you want. That's a lot easier. but you pay the price for that down the road. I know, I just read a quote from Morgan Freeman, and he said, if you don't discipline your children, how did he say it? I'm just trying to think of it. But the gist of it was, if you don't take the time to discipline your children when they're young, down the road, you'll be hiring a lawyer to take care of the crimes they commit. I thought that was pretty profound. Better to invest the time now, yes, than the money later. Up to the age of 8 or 9, this is a quote by Robert Anderson. Up to the age of 8 or 9, the only important mission of any human being is to discover that he or she is worthy. I could talk for a week on that. So we're going to talk about how to build the self-esteem or the self-worth, which is different than confidence. Confidence is, hey, you can do it. You can jump over there. You can zip line. You can ski down that hill. But self-worth is something totally different. Self-esteem or self-worth is the ability to place value on ourselves, to know we have worth and that we're good enough. Self-confidence is boosted when the self-esteem is intact. So here's what can happen. Another little story. Mary had the self-confidence to study and make the grades, and because of her low self-esteem, felt that she did not deserve the high marks. The next semester, the low grades started to appear one at a time, and nobody could understand why. Well, the why is when we believe we do not deserve something, we will set things up to fail. Have I ever sabotaged myself? And if I'm busy doing that, what are my children learning to do? So this chapter is called How to Properly Validate, because that's what builds self-worth. Okay? Most of us are walking around with damaged self-worth from early childhood negative experiences that we didn't know how to solve. So how do we validate? Well, I have another story, another little Johnny story. So if somebody were to say to me, Laurie, and this is always looking crooked to me. I don't know why, but anyway, Laurie, I love your red blouse. I love those earrings. Well, the earrings and the blouse don't actually care. But if you said, Laurie, you look terrific in red. Now I'm the person being validated. We've been programmed to validate the things, the stuff, the behaviors. All right. And when I share this story, you'll understand what I mean. That's why knowing how to properly validate people is important. And I don't hear a whole lot of it. I hear you got a great, if I see a guy, like we have a neighbor, he has a truck. He has a beautiful red truck and he keeps that thing just shiny. I could go over there and put my makeup on in it. So the other day I was over there just having a little chat and he got a new red truck. And he wasn't in the truck, but let's just help me out here hypothetically. If he had been sitting in his truck, I would not have said, wow, what a beautiful vehicle. That is the most amazing truck. I would say, you look hot in that truck. You look good in that truck. You see, because then it's the person that's getting the validation. So here's a little example. Johnny had just spent all day cleaning his room. So mom goes in to inspect and her feedback goes something like this. Oh, Johnny, great job. That desk looks wonderful and the bed is perfectly made. Just one thing though, you did not dust those blinds. Better get that done. That's how we think we're validating our children? No. So the problem is the desk got the compliment, the bed got the compliment, the work got the compliment, and Johnny got criticized. You did not. There was absolutely no validation in that conversation. So here's a better way to say that. So just picture little Johnny after Mom says all that, how he'd be feeling about cleaning his room. Would that motivate him to do it again? Probably not. Probably not. Here's the better answer. Johnny, I'm so proud of you. Tell me, when did you become so organized to make your desk look like that? You have worked really hard. When you have a few minutes, could you find some energy to dust those blinds? You are amazing. Now, that communicated that way would want me to do it again and again and probably keep my room clean all the time. Do. What's the difference between those two lines of communication? Everything. But it's kind of like the line is really fine. And once we can pick up on or become more aware of how we're communicating and what we're actually saying, then the esteem will grow, because we need to repair and restore our self-worth. And nothing will give it to you but inside work. So you can have lots of money, you can be highly educated, you can have a big house, you can have that nice shiny truck I was talking about, a renovated kitchen. Maybe you think another relationship will do it for you, or another baby will do it for you. And so what happens when that self-worth gets damaged earlier in life? We spend the rest of our lives going outside of ourselves to find it. And it doesn't work. And then everybody wonders, well, I've worked so hard, I've got everything, and I still don't feel peaceful or happy. That's because that self-worth is still damaged in there. I recently got called a really cool name. A family member of a young man that I was working with called me a soul mechanic. S-O-U-L, a soul mechanic. The soul mechanic. I just think that has a real good ring to it. So in summarizing that, we have to work on the confidence. That's teaching our kids how to take risks, like walking up to the bully yourself and saying, hey, how are you doing? Are you having a good day? Wouldn't that be interesting if a kid was so confident they could walk up to that bully and say, hey, are you okay? Are you having a good day? And then the self-worth. And that has to be done in a process. And I'm happy to say we have those processes in place. We've been doing that for decades. Longer than most people have been alive, actually. Oh my gosh, I hate to think of it that way. All right. So what do I need to change? What do you need to change to properly validate your children so that you stop all this other stuff? And we need to be promoting and validating their belief system. So in other words, rewarding that. So let's use the hockey example. Let's say your son plays hockey, or your daughter. Here in Canada, our boys and girls play hockey together. And you say, oh boy, that was a great game. Oh boy, that was a great score. Woo. That's one way to do it, and that's how most people do it. But a better way to do that would be, do you realize how valuable that goal was and how valuable you are to the team? Wow. See? Big difference. So maybe we need to make some changes, because that helps to build the esteem to prevent the bully from having any impact. Yes, I have another story around that, but I'm going to save it for another day because it fits in with something else. So we're going to get 5 things done today, 5 out of the 10. Removing guilt and shame. This is tough. We are brought up in a reward and punishment mentality. If you're bad, you get punished, and then it would be that person's interpretation of what is bad. If you're good, you get rewarded. And that happens in the school system, right away in kindergarten. That was what we did. If you got all of your printing done perfectly, you got a sticker. And if you didn't, you got red marks all over it. We learn very quickly that the world is always going to be full of rewards and punishment. But for a lot of people, they lean to the punishment side and their life is in total crisis all the time. And I know people that if they're not in a crisis, they make one up or they create it or they attract it. So it's very important for our children to know the difference between guilt and shame. And as a mentor to children, I better know what that means. Otherwise, I'm wrapping guilt around everything. I don't know. This is just a joke. So no disrespect or offense to be taken. But as a woman, I know I was born with 2 extra chromosomes. One is called guilt and one is called on sale. I think I've got it tattooed, but on my arm or somewhere, because on my forehead I have tattooed, tell me your story because I actually care. Or tell me your story because I will listen. So guilt is actually a negative emotion wrapped around a mistake. So when we make a mistake and we feel guilty, that's a good thing because that means we have a conscience. If we feel guilty and have not made a mistake or done anything wrong, we have esteem issues. And that affects our confidence. How many times I meet people every day, new people, and when I hear people saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm sorry I'm late. Oh, I'm sorry I showed up." Oh, you know what they're really saying? "I'm sorry to be alive." So what produces that feeling of guilt in you? Because whatever that is, you'll see it happening in your kids. That saying, "the apple doesn't fall far from the tree," is so accurate. What makes your children feel guilty? Well, kids can feel guilty about a lot of things. They can feel guilty about causing you stress, um, not wanting to share with you too much because they feel guilty, because if they do, they might be punished. There's lots of reasons. But guilt is a good thing. And feeling ashamed of myself is a confidence buster. So let's say, hey, as a kid, we all tried stealing something. I stole a box of crayons. That would be me. Some kids steal a chocolate bar or they steal a bottle of pop or something, right? Now, the way that gets corrected is very, very important because we have to learn that stealing is a crime and it can put you away, right? It can put you in jail. So feeling ashamed of myself is a confidence buster. Labels, name calling, put downs can make me feel ashamed. So if I stole the crayons, which I actually did, and my mom caught me and I had to take them back to the owner, make a long story short. But the one thing my mom didn't do, which a lot of moms would do, is, after a situation like that, she might have said to the rest of the family, "Now, be careful because Laurie just stole that box of crayons and now we have a thief in the house." See, the label is what makes me feel ashamed of who I am. And the mistake is downplayed. The big deal was it's wrong to steal. Here's how you're going to learn that. And yes, there were consequences, but my mom didn't make it about me being a thief. So kids get called names. What do you know that your kid's been called? Maybe he's been called an idiot, a dork, a geek, stupid. Yeah. And all of those things do not build self-worth or confidence. It kills it. Kills it. So what labels have you placed on your children? Just be very, very careful because that's what causes us to feel ashamed of who we are. What can I do to reduce the guilt and shame my kids are experiencing? Some kids are feeling ashamed because their parents are divorced. Some kids are ashamed because their parents are still together and wish they'd get a divorce. See, it's all about perspective because they don't want to see her beating him up anymore or vice versa. What behaviors have I noticed in my children that would indicate that they are carrying shame? Well, some of those behaviors are things like lying, hiding, stealing, telling more lies, not socializing. And we know what the coronavirus did to that. That just isolated and insulated us even more. So just pay attention. Pay attention, and they will tell you in all their different little ways how they're feeling inside. So, the power of no, how to validate properly, becoming fearless, supporting versus enabling, and getting rid of the guilt and shame. These are all necessary to keep the bullies away. And who do they pick on? They pick on who they think they can scare. So I was invited to speak at a high school near my community here about 5 years ago now. They were having an anti-bullying day, and they had the big, the t-shirts and everything. And I said, well, I can't speak on that. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you need to take the word bullying right out of your vocabulary for starters, because as long as you keep talking about it, it's going to be in existence. So, but if you want me to come over and talk about how to prevent that, call it something different and I'll come. And they did. And I went and I talked about what we just discussed, how you can defend yourself against bullies, but you need confidence and self-worth to do that. And if you don't have any, we'll always be victims of other people's bad behavior. That's why I married the wrong people. I've been married 3 times. The first one, the second one, and to my husband Ron now for 32 years, and I was bullied in those relationships. I know that now. And I probably did a fair amount of bullying myself with threats and ultimatums and you better do this or you better do that, or yeah, I was kicked around too. Not physically ever, but emotionally and verbally and sexually, definitely bullied. So that's our story and we're sticking to it. And when I have a solo show again, I will do the last 5 things: peace and harmony in the home, love in action, keeping dreams alive, very important, promoting core values, and how to have a proper family meeting. I can't wait till tomorrow. Tuesday is our finance day, and our guru, I call him our guru, Mr. Ramin Modiri, will be here. And tomorrow, I believe his topic is very interesting. It has something to do with mini skirts, I think, and money. I'm not sure. I'll have to reread it, but I'll put a post up. We've been streaming live here on E360 TV, our Facebook page, Self-Worth the Missing Link Superstars, and my YouTube channel, Laurie Davis Show Host. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And of course, you can pick the show up at any time at your leisure in those 3 places. So I'll be back tomorrow with Ramin, and we'll do our weekly Tuesday show on finance. And it's been a lot of fun because Ramin is a researcher. And one week we did the 15 best places to retire. One week we talked about 10 movies that were where we learned things about money, like Moneyball, Traders, different movies that we watched over the years. And one week he did 20 books that he's used to educate himself financially. And I like to brag about him because he has every financial credential that you can actually get in the United States of America. So he's a gift. He's a best kept secret like myself. So we're working together, helping people. We've just launched our 100 Shades of Prosperity, which is 100 workshops in finance. Wow. It's fun. Okay. Talk to you later. And today we've been discussing 10 ways to build confident children and to keep those bullies away from your kids. All right, that's our job. Bye for now. See you tomorrow.